All right. I'm excited to announce our next speaker. However, I'm going to welcome here the host of the Chris Salcedo Show on Newsmax, Chris Salcedo.
Hey, everybody. I'm hoping if I'm loud enough, a lot of the folks down there in the booths will come up and have a gander at what we're talking about. First off, I hope somebody in the sides will let me know when I'm a talk show host. If somebody doesn't give me the hook, I'm going to be up here talking forever. So I kind of approach speeches the kind of way that Trump does. It's kind of a stream of consciousness thing, but I did write one thing down that I wanted to make sure that I passed on to folks. How do you defeat an enemy if you're constantly giving power to that enemy? Can somebody answer that question? Now, I think the folks that are gathered here at the first annual convention of the Gun Owners of America, I don't think the folks realize the magnitude of what you're a part of. The magnitude of what you're a part of is that you are watching a handoff between what once was the preeminent Second Amendment organization in the United States of America to the up and coming preeminent institution in America that is protecting the Second Amendment and our right of self-defense. The old guys, which I will get to in my story here in a minute, have dropped the ball in significant ways, in more ways than I can count recently. And I'll tell you the story about that in a minute. But Gun Owners of America is now, and this is how we introduce them when they come on to the radio show, when they come on to the television show, we introduce Gun Owners of America as the preeminent Second Amendment rights organization in the United States today, bar none. So all of you who are in attendance, all of you who are checking out the booths, availing yourself of the latest technology to protect you and yours, your right of self-defense, your God-given right of self-defense, you must understand what you're a part of. Can you imagine being at the beginning of the NRA, where they started and the foundations as they built that organization? You are here now, and you are witnessing the handoff. So my story begins when I joined the National Rifle Association. I did it live on the air with a buddy of mine, good buddy of mine named Grant Stinchfield. You guys remember Grant Stinchfield? He's got his own show out there. Wonderful, wonderful human being, great man. And so, and maybe it was me, because when the minute I joined, all of a sudden everything's starting to go to hell in a handbasket with that old organization. The scandal, the misappropriation of funds that we, the people, had trusted to them. And then something happened in my home state of Texas. A name you're probably not familiar with. He is the Speaker of the Texas House. His name is Dade Phelan. Dade Phelan is a Republican. But Dade Phelan empowers Democrats. He promotes them to key positions of power and authority inside of the Texas House, even though they are not in the majority. They sit as chairmen of committees. You know what their job is as Democrats, appointed by a Republican? Their job is to kill conservative legislation. The National Rifle Association endorsed Dade Phelan in his last re-election bid in the primaries. When I, your liberty-loving Latino, asked one of their representatives to call me and said, excuse me, you recognize that the man you just endorsed empowers the very party that is out there trying to strip Americans of their Second Amendment right of self-defense. Do you recognize this? Yes, but he's always been very good about the Second Amendment. Wait a minute. Did you hear me? he puts Democrats in positions of power and authority to steal our Second Amendment rights. Did you hear what I just said? Yes, but he's so good on the Second Amendment. Which goes back to my the only note that I made that I wanted to tell you. How can we defeat an enemy when we're constantly giving that enemy power? How do we do that? The National Rifle Association was not able to connect the dots, or maybe they were, that Dade Phelan allowing Democrats to remain in power, to gain a foothold into Texas, will eventually one day be able to consolidate that power into a direct attack on our ability to defend ourselves and our families. How short-sighted can you be? Have you met Kamala Harris? Have you seen Tim Awals? Tim Awals, a man who lied about his military service in an effort to take away your right of self-defense. That takes a Democrat, doesn't it? The chutzpah, the arrogance of these people. The arrogance. Hey, to you, I'm going to lie about my military service and say that I handled weapons of war in a war zone when I didn't, in an effort to tell you that I am the authority to take weapons of war away from you, which you don't have. The AR-15 is not a weapon of war, and everybody knows it. A 9mm pistol is not a weapon of war, and everybody knows it. But don't tell that to a Democrat, the very same people that Speaker Dade Phelan wants to keep in power, keep in the game, so they can come after you eventually. And the NRA says, hey, he's good on the Second Amendment. Gun owners of America have a different approach. And why I introduce them on my radio show, my television show, as the preeminent gun rights organization in the United States. Because they are not so short-sighted. They understand where the enemies of freedom are, where they reside, what they call themselves, what their policies are, and they do not negotiate the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, which is quite clear. It was said earlier in one of these wonderful talks, you don't have to negotiate your God-given rights, which a legitimate government, and only a legitimate government, protects. And anyone, whether they call themselves a Democrat or Dade Phelan in my home state of Texas, that threatens that, they don't deserve your support. They don't deserve your time. They deserve your 100% opposition. And that's where Gun Owners of America, I believe, separates itself from the other guys. You're obviously Democrat or Dade Phelan under the mistaken impression that you're in a negotiation for my rights. You're obviously under the mistaken impression that so-called Republicans can give away my rights in an effort to ingratiate themselves to the other party. My rights are not negotiable. Neither are yours. And there is a gun rights organization in this country that recognizes that, and only one, in your liberty-loving Latinos' opinion. And that is Gun Owners of America. So again, I just want to point out that in your discussions moving forward, you guys are here, the first convention of Gun Owners of America. You will be able to tell your children, your grandchildren, you were there at the beginning. As Gun Owners of America assumes the mantle and moves forward without compromise. Look, I am not one of the conservatives that is unyielding. I believe in compromising to get desired goals, should you have good negotiating partners. But we in the conservative movement and those who believe in the Second Amendment have not had good negotiating partners on the other side for about 30 or 40 years, I'd estimate. One other bit of the conversation that I had with the NRA was, well, you know, some Democrats are pro-Second Amendment too. Can we afford that kind of naivete? Can we afford, even if it was naivete and not, well, pragmatism is what they would call it, what I would call surrender. So look, in the United States of America that we live in today, I do not believe that you and I can afford naivete. We can't afford not to recognize the threat that is posed to our fundamental rights, which are supposed to be protected in the Constitution of the United States. You and I cannot afford to have organizations that purport to speak for us and lawmakers who purport to speak for us take our resources, take our money, whether it be money that's volunteered or money that's taxed away from us, and then take that very same money and negotiate away our rights. The Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, at its fundamental basis is your right of self-defense. What I find astonishing about the other side, about those who the NRA doesn't recognize is an enemy to freedom and liberty, they will say, I'm going to pass this law that allows a whole bunch of criminals to rampage across your streets. We are very pro-criminal in the Democrat Socialist Party. We are very pro-criminal. At the very same time, they will argue, as they are working to let convicted criminals out to harm you, your family, your communities, they will say, you and your right to defend yourself, that's the problem. If you just couldn't defend yourself, well, then everything would be fine. And that's the argument they make over and over and over again. And they've got a very compliant press. They've got a very compliant media that carries that message. You are the problem, they say. When a psychopath goes crazy with a firearm inside of a school, they say, well, that's your fault because you just had to have a Second Amendment to protect your rights. You're looking, whoa, it's not my Second Amendment that did that. A very good friend of mine once told me, and he wrote it down in a book. His name's Jay McFarland. You might be able to find the book. One of the greatest risks in living in a free society is that somebody may abuse that freedom. It's a risk. But we as Americans decided that it was a risk worth taking considering the alternative. So the other side has said, well, when somebody abuses their freedom, we must punish the entirety of society, except for the government. Hell, the government can violate your rights, and they don't get their rights taken away now, do they? But somebody else misuses their rights, whether it be their First Amendment, their Second Amendment rights, and then you all have to lose your rights because of what they do? No. Real Americans know and understand that the individuals who violate the trust of the Constitution, our rules of law, they should be the ones to pay the price, and they alone. Not us. So, again, I hope that as you travel throughout the convention, throughout the weekend, that you're mindful about what you're a part of. I am. I could not have been more excited to have been invited here. This is the first, I'm going to be able to tell my grandkids. I was at the first Gun Owners of America convention. I spoke. I was honored to be invited to speak about liberty, about essential liberty, at the first Gun Owners of America convention, where they defined themselves as the preeminent organization defending the Second Amendment in the United States, as the organization that used to have that mantle has abdicated it. And I could not be more excited to be a part of it. And I hope you will take that throughout this entire weekend. When you're down there perusing, I was down in the booth, and I was perusing some of the firearms. I'm getting an education, sharing what I knew. And it was exciting. And I can just imagine how they felt back in the day. So I look at this very much as a beginning of a new push. We have never, take this from me, you have never seen an assault on your rights, your basic liberties that we are seeing today. It has never been more organized. It has never been more harmful. It has never been more dangerous to the future of this country than it is today. And it doesn't require passivity. It doesn't require let's negotiate which rights we want to give away. No. It requires strength and conviction and a basic understanding of what those fundamental rights were put in place to do and why they are still essential today. Ronald Reagan said that freedom must be defended again, and then again. We don't inherit our freedom through the bloodstream. It is something that we must have eternal vigilance to maintain. The founding fathers of this country knew and understood, as they meticulously created the Constitution of the United States with a check and balance system. You've all heard that. How many of you know about checks and balances? You all learned, well, maybe not in GovEd these days, but back when GovEd was public education, when I was in there, they did teach us about checks and balances. And let me tell you about the Second Amendment. That is the biggest check on totalitarian government power that exists. And we cannot afford to let it go away. So that's my message to you. We're right on this issue. Why? Because the founding fathers are a hell of a lot smarter than the current politicians we have today. They knew it. They understood it. And I don't want to hear from the other side, well, wouldn't it be nice if we lived in a land where we wouldn't need fire? Yes, it would be nice. And as my father would tell me, it would be nice if a frog had wings, it wouldn't bump its rear end every time it hopped. But sadly, frogs don't have wings. And sadly, we do have a dangerous world. And sadly, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And the check to that corruption is you. And gun owners of America. Because they know and understand the fundamental precepts that I've just outlined to you. And you guys are here to witness it. It's extraordinary. It's transformational if you think about it. You are witnessing an incredible moment in our history. And I believe you, me, gun owners of America will rise to meet that moment. Thank you for hearing my words, and have a blessed day, folks.